So if you've ever wondered what astrophysicists and spacey, sciencey type of science guys do in their off time, well, this is the movie for you. Cosmos follows three scientists as they monitor the skies over the course of one night in a car out in the middle of nowhere. Each one of our main characters has a story to tell, and the movie does a very good job of naturally telling us that as we get to know these characters and the situation that they're in. This movie is a slow burn. I didn't say boring, but it is a slow burn. There's a lot of talking and not a lot of action in this movie. So if that's not your thing, this probably isn't going to be the one for you. However, if you are into slower movies that are much more character driven, you might find some enjoyment here. I really liked this movie, and I think it goes a long way in showing what filmmakers can do with very little money but tons of creativity. The vast majority of this movie takes place inside of one car or right outside of that car, and it is almost entirely comprised of these three characters talking to themselves and just developing their characters, finding out more about them, where they came from, who they are, and what they're here doing. There is an overarching story here about a signal that they receive and what that signal is, where it's coming from, and what it means. And that story does take over the movie at one point. But this movie is much more about these three guys and their personal stories than this overarching story itself. And it's so interesting and done so well. It's hard to imagine that a movie about three guys sitting in a car talking for 2 hours could be interesting, but it really is. It never gets boring. Admittedly, there are a couple of times that it teeters on the edge, but it never quite gets there. It always yanks you back from that edge just in time and keeps you invested in the story and the characters. The performances in a movie like this will make or break it. I mean, that's 90% of the movie is their performances. So if they don't work, the movie don't work. Thankfully here they do. None of these guys are well-known actors, or at least actors that I've ever heard of or seen, but they all do a phenomenal job. I kind of wonder if this movie was shot in chronological order, because their performances tend to get better as the movie goes on. There are just a couple of parts in the very beginning that have a bit of stilted or cheesy delivery of lines, but honestly that might be because these three characters don't all know each other. There is an awkward getting to know each other period, and that may be why some of these lines were delivered in this way. Beyond that extremely small handful of lines, everything else here is done great. I mean, really, these are some really good performances, not just for a small movie, just for a movie in general. These performances are really, really good. At first, you really don't know if you like all of these characters. One of them comes off as just kind of a dickhead, and another one seems kind of like he's just clueless. But through the natural storytelling, we find out more about these characters and understand their motivations as things go on. We understand why he seems like a dickhead. We understand why this guy seems pretty clueless. All three characters end up being likable and relatable characters with backstories that most people can relate to in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And getting to know these guys and what's happened to them and what's led them to this point in their lives is a treat from beginning to end. That overarching story I was talking about the signal that they receive and what it means and what all's going on with that, is really interesting too. And while the end of the movie does very much more deal with that storyline, it also gives resolution to these three characters and the storylines that were leading up to the point of this main storyline beginning. It's a very satisfying ending that I was extremely happy with, that will leave anyone watching it with a big smile on their face and just really feeling good overall. The story, the way that it's executed, the world, all the characters, everything within this movie is very realistic and grounded. One of the reasons this is a slow burn is because this science that they're doing seems real. It's not instantaneous. It's a lot of monitoring and watching things and stuff that we, the viewers, don't totally understand until they explain it to us a little bit. It's very sciencey. I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, I would say that the person who wrote this and many of the filmmakers probably have a science background of some sorts, because everything in this movie seems pretty legit. If this type of thing that happens in this movie were to happen in real life, I feel like this is probably similar to how it would really go off. From a technical standpoint, this movie does a fantastic job on pretty much every front. Even though it had virtually no budget, the few special effects that they have know their limits and are extremely effective. And overall, just the look of the movie, the sound, all the technical aspects of it look great. This does not look like a cheap movie. So kudos to the filmmakers for knowing what they had to work with and putting it to the best use possible. Guys, this movie has tons of heart in front of and behind the camera. You can tell that everybody involved here not only loved what they were doing, but was extremely passionate about this story that they wanted to tell. And it shows from beginning to end of this fantastic little movie. This is a true testament to the fact that you don't need tons of money and explosions and all kinds of special effects to make a good movie. You need an interesting, intriguing, good story and people that are truly passionate about making it, and you'll make just that. A great movie. And that's what they did here. And while I don't know if this movie will lend itself very well to repeat viewings, that initial viewing is going to be a great time because Cosmos is absolutely worth a rent. Even though this movie pretty much consists of 3 guys sitting in a car talking for 2 hours, it is still a great time, and if you give it a chance, I think you'll have a wonderful time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of Cosmos. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Springfield.
You make the right moves here, and you have in your hands the greatest discovery in the history of mankind.
I really enjoyed this movie, but there was one part that I was really just kind of wondering about. Closer to the end of the movie, they're in a hurry to go somewhere. They need to leave quickly. And there's a piece of equipment that they have to make the decision of whether to leave behind or not. Now, I understand that this piece of equipment is not only really expensive, but has a special place in one of the main character's hearts. He doesn't want to leave it. It means a whole lot to him. However, I don't understand why once they get to where they're going and they go to do the thing that they're going to do, why couldn't they just come the fuck back and get it? I mean, it's not like anybody else was around where they're gonna leave it. I feel like they could have left it and came back an hour or 2 later and it'd still be there. Everything'd be okay. But they made like this really big deal about just leaving it there. And, you know, I don't know. It's just one of those things I think about when watching movies. Come to think of it, it was probably supposed to be something about leaving the past behind and moving on to new things or something like that. There was probably some type of message there. And I was just too dense to get it.